I knew I was pushing my limits. By the time I pulled into our driveway that Thursday night, it was nearly 10. Again, the whole week had been back-to-back late nights at the office, finalizing specs, jumping through legal hoops, and smoothing egos to lock in the satellite deal. Months of effort, riding on one signature. We got it, but it cost me. I sat in the car for a minute, forehead resting against the wheel. My name's Jordan. I'm 38, living in San Diego, and I'm an aerospace engineer. People think it sounds glamorous. It's not. It's just pressure, responsibility, and no margin for error. Inside, the lights were still on. That meant Natalia was still up. My wife of 10 years. She worked part-time as a high-end event stylist, technically. But really, it was her way of floating through flower arrangements and champagne tastings with her equally wealthy, equally bored friends. Hey, I said, stepping into the kitchen. I kissed the top of her head as I dropped my bag. She didn't look up. You're late. Again. I didn't bother explaining. She knew why. She just didn't care. Dinner was plated already. Chicken, some kind of salad, wine poured. We sat. She picked at her food while flipping through something on her tablet. Did you see that episode of Modern Mansions last night? She asked, barely glancing at me. They did a full kitchen remodel in Calabasas, diamond inlaid tile. Literal diamonds. Can you believe that? I let out a low whistle. Seems a little much. And they're getting a custom-built yacht, she went on, still staring at the screen. Fully automated. Heated floors. 2 helipads. We should look into something like that. Even just for a weekend charter. I paused with my fork halfway to my mouth. Nat, we just closed the satellite contract. But the industry's been shaky. They're already talking about possible cutbacks. She finally looked up, blinking like I'd interrupted a daydream. So, maybe we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. Let's see how the next quarter plays out. It wouldn't kill us to be smart with money right now. She gave a little laugh, sharp and dismissive. That's easy for you to say. What does that mean? She went back to her tablet. It means you're the provider, Jordan. Just keep the money flowing. I stared at her. At first, I thought I misheard. But she said it so casually, like she was asking me to pick up milk on the way home. Excuse me, I said, keeping my voice level. Still scrolling. Don't start. It's not that serious. No apology. Not even eye contact. I chewed slowly, pretending like it didn't feel like the floor had just cracked under me. I wanted to believe she didn't mean it, that it came out wrong. But deep down, I knew better. That wasn't a slip. It was the truth. Her truth. I wasn't her partner. I was a paycheck. A wallet with a pulse. We finished dinner in silence. I cleared the plates. She wandered off to the couch with her wine and her glassy-eyed dreams of yachts and diamonds. And I stood at the sink, staring out into the dark yard, rinsing the remnants of dinner off her plate. And I knew. Something had shifted. And I wasn't sure I could ever go back. I left the kitchen without a word. Natalia was still on the couch, curled up under a throw blanket, legs tucked just so, glass of Cabernet in hand. From the way her eyes flicked lazily over the TV screen, you'd think nothing had happened. Like calling me just a provider was no different than pointing out it might rain tomorrow. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. In our bedroom, I didn't even bother changing out of my work clothes. I walked straight into my home office, shut the door quietly behind me, and sat down at my desk. The room was cold, cleaner than usual, lit only by the soft glow of my dual monitors. At first, I just stared at the screen, my mind running through excuses, rationalizations, all the ways I could convince myself that what Natalia said didn't mean anything. But I knew better. I'd spent years designing fail-safes for multi-million-dollar aerospace systems. I knew when a structural fracture had already spread past the point of no return. This wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a warning. It was a reveal. She said exactly what she felt. And now I knew exactly where I stood. I clicked open the spreadsheet I kept, our joint financial records. I'd always been the one who handled everything. Bills, credit cards, savings, investments, travel points. She never cared to ask how it all worked. She just swiped and smiled. That would end tonight. I started with the credit cards. Her name was authorized on all of them, platinum, black tier, even the one I used for work expenses when we traveled together. I removed her from each one, methodically, like dismantling a payload from a dead rocket. It took 3 clicks per card. Remove user. Confirm. Save. Then the store accounts. High-end boutiques, designer furniture showrooms, private spa memberships. Gone. She wouldn't notice tonight. Probably not tomorrow either. But eventually, she'd swipe one of them, and the machine would blink red. I opened the app for our bank. We had a shared account for appearances. I moved the bulk of the funds to a private holding I'd set up years ago, just in case. There wasn't much in the shared one, anyway. She rarely deposited anything. Her job was more champagne than paycheck. She could keep that account. Let her stare at the declining numbers herself. I closed every session with care. Nothing too abrupt. Nothing she'd wake up and discover in a panic. She'd figure it out eventually. That was the point. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. My heart was calm, oddly enough. I thought I'd feel rage. But no, just a hollow sort of peace. I wasn't out for revenge. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted control back. Even if she didn't know it yet, the balance had already shifted. Downstairs, I heard her laugh at something on TV. For 72 hours, she floated through life like nothing had changed. Still tapping through designer lookbooks with her best friend. Still talking about brunch reservations and spa dates. And I watched the clock tick toward impact. Friday afternoon, I was sitting in the office conference room with a stack of printed technical specs spread out in front of me. My team was going over last-minute revisions for a critical deployment phase, and I was only half listening. My mind kept drifting back to the kitchen, to Natalia's voice, that flat dismissal echoing in my head. Just keep the money flowing. It had been almost 3 full days since I'd made the changes. She hadn't said a word. Not a single mention of a declined card, a strange bank notification, nothing. I knew her spending patterns. Friday afternoons were prime territory for a blow-up, and right on cue, my phone started vibrating. First once, then again, then nonstop. 5 missed calls in under a minute. I quietly slipped the phone off the table and checked the screen. Natalia. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Then the messages started. Furious, rapid-fire texts. What the hell, Jordan? Why is my Amex declined? I'm standing in this studio like an idiot. Call me. Right now. I sighed and excused myself from the meeting. In the hallway, the phone buzzed again. I finally picked up. Natalia, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She was already mid-screen. Are you out of your mind? You canceled my cards? All of them. There was background noise, murmurs, awkward laughter. She was still at the upscale interior design studio, no doubt trying to impress someone when the decline happened. I could picture it clearly. The polished front desk, the sleek marble floors, the stylist's tight smile as she handed her back the card and said, I'm sorry, ma'am, this one isn't working. I kept my voice even. You're no longer an authorized user. There was a beat of silence. Then, what are you talking about? I removed you from all accounts. They're in my name, and I've chosen to manage them differently now. She laughed sharp and ugly. You've lost your damn mind. You humiliated me. Do you know who was there? Chloe. Kendra. The whole damn staff. I looked like some mooch who maxed out her husband's cards. I stayed quiet. She kept going. This is financial abuse, Jordan. You don't get to cut me off like I'm some deadbeat. You embarrassed me, in public, like I'm nothing. Funny, I said. That's how you made me feel Tuesday night. What? When you told me I was just a provider. When you didn't even look up from your screen to say it. You reduced me to a wallet, Natalia. And now you're surprised I stopped acting like one. There was silence on the line. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. Then the shrieking started again. I cannot believe you're doing this to me. This is petty. This is cruel. You think this makes you some kind of man? You think this proves something? I said quietly, that it draws a line. I want my access reinstated. Today. Or I swear I cut her off. We'll talk about this later. But we'll do it without the screaming. If you can't do that, we won't talk at all. And I hung up. I stood there for a long moment, staring out the floor-to-ceiling window at the city skyline. The sun had dipped low enough to catch the glass of the neighboring buildings, throwing back fractured light in all directions. My hand was still clenched around the phone. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. And maybe, just maybe, that was a kind of peace. Saturday morning was quiet. The kind of quiet you don't trust. I was already up by 7, made coffee, showered, and sat in the living room waiting like it was a scheduled operation. I texted Natalia the night before, we need to talk. 10 a.m. kitchen. At 9:58, she walked in. Hair curled, full makeup, a cream-colored cashmere sweater and gold bangles stacked on her wrists. Not a trace of humility. If anything, she looked more polished than usual. Like she was preparing for a negotiation she assumed she'd win. She didn't even sit at first. Let me guess, she said, dropping her phone onto the marble island. You've had your little tantrum, and now you're ready to apologize. I said nothing. She sighed, annoyed. Jordan, seriously. Cutting off my cards? Making a scene at the studio? What was that? Some kind of test? I nodded toward the stool across from me. Sit down. I'd rather stand. Suit yourself, I said. But we're not moving forward until we talk, really talk, about what happened. She finally pulled out the stool, crossed her legs, and stared at me like she was being forced to endure punishment. Fine. Say what you need to say. I looked her in the eye. When you told me I was just a provider, you didn't even blink. And the worst part wasn't the words, it was that they came so easily. Like that's all I've ever been to you. She rolled her eyes. God, you're still hung up on that? Yes, I said, my voice firmer. Because it wasn't just a stray comment. It was the truth coming out. She snorted. You're being so sensitive. It was a joke, Jordan. A stupid one. No, it wasn't. I leaned forward. You haven't treated me like a partner in a long time. You live like money grows on trees, but I'm the one putting in the hours. You don't ask. You just spend. And when I mentioned being careful, you mocked me. You're exaggerating. Am I? I slid a printed budget proposal across the island. This is what I put together. Joint expenses. A monthly cap. A fair split of responsibilities. Take a look. She barely glanced at it before pushing it back toward me. I'm not living like some middle-class accountant's wife, Jordan. That's not the life we built. That's not who I am. I stared at her. What are you saying? I'm saying this isn't up for negotiation, she said coolly. You want to play financial dictator? Fine. But don't expect me to act like it's normal. You humiliated me, and now you want me to thank you for a spreadsheet. I stayed quiet. She stood. Unfreeze my accounts, apologize, and maybe we can move on. Otherwise, she gave a shrug, like it didn't even matter. I don't know where this goes. I stood too, calm. I know exactly where it goes. She blinked, caught off guard for the first time. I left the budget on the counter and walked past her. Let her decide what to do with it. But I already knew what I was going to do with her answer. By Monday, the house felt colder, not in temperature, but in temperature of tone. Natalia never raised her voice after our talk. That would have taken effort. Instead, she shifted tactics completely. What came next wasn't a confrontation. It was punishment. Tuesday morning, she passed me in the hallway and said, "All fake shipper, since we're budgeting now, I canceled my massage membership." Then she paused dramatically. God, I guess I'll just have to live with tension. My shoulders are already seizing up. I said nothing. Just sipped my coffee and kept walking. That night, she stood in front of the fridge, staring blankly inside like something magical might appear. Is it okay if I get almond milk this week? Or is that considered a luxury now? I kept eating my dinner. Then came Thursday. I walked in from work, briefcase still in hand, and she was seated at the dining table with a spreadsheet of her own open on her tablet, a calculator beside her, and a glass of red wine untouched. Just trying to figure out what we can still afford, she said loudly, not looking up. Do you think tap water's too extravagant? Maybe I'll start boiling it just to feel rich. I didn't answer. I dropped my stuff upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and rubbed my face with both hands. I wasn't tired from work. I was tired from the performance. The constant, deliberate act of being the victim in her own little play. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. But every minute in the house felt like walking through invisible smoke. You couldn't see the fire, but you smelled it, felt it pressing against your skin. She didn't cook all week. Didn't even bother with takeout. I'd come home to an empty kitchen and some melodramatic sigh-like. Didn't want to touch the budget. Figured you might deduct it from my allowance. I ate a lot of sandwiches that week. Alone. Then, late Friday night, I got an alert from the bank. One of our rarely used accounts, an emergency backup card I had forgotten even existed, had just been declined. Someone tried to run a charge at a boutique skincare shop downtown. I logged in. Sure enough, it was her. That account had a single card tied to her name. I'd left it active, out of habit. Some tiny, stupid part of me still assumed she'd show restraint. I sat at my desk and disabled it in 10 seconds flat. Didn't even hesitate. The next morning, she didn't say a word. Not about the decline, not about the card. She just breezed past me in a silk robe, sunglasses on indoors, and muttered something about checking on a friend. But I could see it. The crack behind the lenses. The game was wearing thin. I found myself sitting in my car after work each evening, parked in the driveway, just breathing. Not scrolling. Not answering emails. Just sitting. 45 minutes. Sometimes an hour. It was the only part of the day that felt quiet, that didn't feel like a performance being staged around me. Inside that house, everything was an act. Every word had weight. Every sigh, every silence, a barb. And I was starting to feel like a guest in my own home. A guest who paid for everything. A guest who was rapidly running out of patience. Saturday was supposed to be quiet. I had no meetings, no emails to catch up on. I planned to sleep in, make coffee, maybe even ride my bike down the coast like I used to before everything became so heavy. But around 8:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with a fraud alert. Unusual account activity detected on your telecom provider account. Did you request to cancel your business line? My stomach dropped. I hadn't. I sat up in bed, still half asleep, and tapped into the account. Sure enough, someone had tried to disconnect my primary business line. The number I'd used for the last 9 years. The one tied to clients, contracts, suppliers, everything. The security system caught it just in time. The request failed because the security answers used didn't match the updated credentials. But they were close. Close enough that whoever tried used the old answers, things only someone in the house would know. A nickname I hadn't used in years. My mother's maiden name, spelled the way Natalia always misspelled it. I stared at the screen. And I knew. I went downstairs. Natalia was already in the kitchen, barefoot. sipping espresso from her gold-rimmed cup like she didn't just try to detonate my career with a fake telecom request. She glanced at me casually. Morning. I didn't speak. I just held up my phone and said, "Did you try to cancel my business line?" She blinked, played it cool. What? No. Why would I do that? I waited. She rolled her eyes and turned to the sink. Oh, please. You're being dramatic again. I might have looked at the account, but I didn't actually do anything. You entered security answers. I was just messing around, she said with a laugh, like it was harmless. God, you're so serious lately. I thought maybe you'd notice and we'd talk. You thought canceling my work number would get my attention? It was a joke, she snapped. You're always locked in that office, making budgets, tracking every penny. I figured you'd finally look up if something hit close to home. I stared at her, feeling something in me go still. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't retail therapy or emotional guilt tripping. This was sabotage. It was a deliberate move, and she didn't even deny it. That was the line, the one I hadn't known I was walking toward until now. I said nothing, just turned around, went back upstairs, and packed a duffel bag. That night, I moved into the guest room, closed the door, locked it. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. The next morning, I got up early, drove to a cafe across town, and called a divorce attorney. I scheduled the consult, made the retainer payment, and forwarded her a folder I'd already prepared: screenshots, financial records, timestamps of the telecom incident. No more waiting. No more discussions. Natalia wanted attention. Now she'd get mine. From across the courtroom. The call came Sunday evening, just after dinner. I was alone in the guest room, scrolling through emails on my laptop, trying to keep my mind steady. Natalia hadn't said much since I moved out of our bedroom. Just long stares across the kitchen, and a few door slams to keep the tension properly dramatic. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail until the voicemail came through and I heard the voice. Jordan, this is Estelle, Natalia's mother. You need to call us back. This has gone too far. I closed the laptop and rubbed my eyes. A minute later, the phone rang again. This time, it was Harold, her father. I answered. Jordan, he barked, skipping any greeting. What the hell is going on over there? Natalia called us crying. I kept my voice flat. You should probably ask her that. He exhaled sharply. We did. And she told us you're threatening her. Financially. Withholding money. She says you locked her out of everything. I didn't respond. Estelle's voice cut in. Apparently they were on speaker. Why would you do that to her, Jordan? You know she's not built for this kind of hardship. That made me laugh. Not out loud. Just one of those tired, stunned exhales that comes when you hear something so ridiculous you can't even believe it. She's not built for hardship? I repeated. Estelle, do you even hear yourself? She's lived a certain way for a long time, Estelle said primly. And for you to suddenly strip that away, well, it's cruel. Cruel. I said, my patience thinning. She called me a wallet. She tried to cancel my business line. She's mocked every attempt I made to set boundaries. Jordan, Harold cut in. Marriage is about compromise. If things are tense, you work through them. I tried. I snapped. I brought her a budget. She laughed at it. I asked for respect. She rolled her eyes. She crossed every line. And you think I should what? Write her another blank check just to keep things quiet. There was silence. Then Estelle, quieter this time. We just want to see things resolved. Peacefully. No, I said. You want things restored. Back to how they were, me footing the bill, her pretending we're fine. That's not peace. That's control. Another pause. Longer this time. Jordan, Harold said, sounding tired now. She's your wife. You made vows. Yeah, I said, standing up, staring out the dark window. And she made a joke out of them. I hung up. For a long moment, I just stood there in the guest room, listening to nothing. No noise. No footsteps. Just the soft hum of silence. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. Natalia's entitlement wasn't just hers. It was inherited, reinforced, enabled. It all taught her she deserved everything, without ever having to lift a finger. And they expected me to be the fool who kept delivering it. I wasn't that fool anymore. The papers were filed 2 weeks later. I didn't say a word when I handed them to her. Just left the envelope on the dining table one morning, right next to her imported matcha powder and unread lifestyle magazines. That night, she exploded. This is disgusting, she snapped, waving the papers like they were covered in dirt. You're really doing this? After all these years? I didn't flinch. You crossed a line, Natalia. I'm not going back. She sneered. You think you're going to come out of this clean? I gave up everything to be with you. You gave up nothing, I said, calm. You dipped in and out of your part-time job like it was a hobby, spent my income like it was your birthright, and mocked me the first time I suggested a budget. You didn't build this life, you decorated it. That was the last real conversation we had. Her lawyer got aggressive fast. They demanded full spousal support, access to joint accounts, even floated the idea that her lifestyle should be preserved at a comparable standard. I let my attorney handle it. Natalia assumed I'd be too proud, too blindsided to prepare. She thought I'd show up to mediation fumbling and flustered. She was wrong. I had documentation, so much documentation it took 3 binders to organize. Printouts of all major purchases. Her name absent from nearly every transaction. Screenshots of her social media posts, caption after caption bragging about treating herself, tagging luxury brands I never even heard her say out loud. And then, the cherry on top, the telecom sabotage. I had the alert log, the failed authorization timestamps, and the name of the service rep who flagged it as suspicious. My attorney laid it all out calmly across the table. Natalia's lawyer glanced over the evidence once, then asked for a recess. She looked like someone had just pulled the rug out from under her Louboutin heels. In the end, the judge saw right through it. The support request was slashed to a fraction, just a temporary order to help her transition. No property claim. No stake in my business. She walked away with her jewelry, her handbags, and the illusion of dignity hanging by a thread. Within weeks, the fallout began. She lost the leased Mercedes, couldn't keep up with the payments once the settlement was finalized. The house went on the market. I let her have the listing agent she'd chosen, just to avoid more noise. I heard through a mutual friend that she ended up in a small 1-bedroom apartment in La Mesa, decent, but far from the gated community she was used to. She posted one last smiling photo online, her on a tiny balcony, holding a wine glass and a $12 sundress. The caption said, "New beginnings #fresh start #blessed." It was down by morning. She'd picked up a job at some event space downtown, checking in guests at weddings she once imagined herself styling. That's what got me, honestly. The thought of her standing near a cupcake tower in someone else's dream, while people smiled right past her. She'd spent years thinking luxury was the default, that her name alone entitled her to marble floors and $6 lattes. But reality doesn't run on entitlement. It runs on effort. And she hadn't made any in a long, long time. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But when the judge said the words minimal support, limited duration, I exhaled for the first time in months. The fantasy was over. And so was her free ride. It's been about 8 months since the divorce was finalized. The house feels different now. Still the same place, same walls, same address, but without the weight in the air. No more silence that felt like punishment. No more tension curled up on the couch in designer throws. Just peace. I kept the house, and I kept it quiet. I swapped out a few things. Sold the over-the-top chandelier she picked out from some French designer. Got rid of the velvet dining chairs she never let anyone actually sit in. Replaced them with solid oak and leather, simple, clean, built to last. My name's still on the mortgage, but for the first time in years, the place actually feels like mine. I picked up biking again. Long rides down the Silver Strand, headphones in, wind in my face, no particular destination. Started meeting up with some old college buddies on weekends. It's nothing wild. Just coffee, some sarcasm, maybe a ride through Balboa Park. But it's real. No drama. No performance. Works better too. I'm sharper. Focused. I actually enjoy solving problems again instead of just putting out fires and coming home to a Cold War. I even started learning Italian. No reason, really. I just always liked how it sounded. Downloaded an app, practiced 10 minutes a day. Mi chiamo Jordan. Sto bene. I'm doing fine. Better than fine. A couple weeks ago, I bought something I always wanted but never dared to buy. A premium Italian espresso machine. I'd mentioned it once years ago, back when we first moved into the house. Natalia laughed, said it was a ridiculous waste of money. Said, "What are you, a barista now?" I dropped it. But now, I bought it. Hooked it up myself. Chrome finish, pressure dial, frother wand. The works. Every morning, I make a cappuccino. I grind the beans, steam the milk, and sit out on the back patio with it, listening to the world wake up. And every single cup tastes like freedom. Not because of the coffee, because no one's draining me dry anymore. No one's in the house silently punishing me for not handing over my soul with my paycheck. It's just me, and the quiet, and the smell of espresso. I don't have anyone telling me I'm just a provider. Because I'm not. I'm a person. A whole one. And I finally remembered what that feels like. People say divorce is the end of something. But for me, it was the start.